You can feel it in the air across America. Something just isn't right. You don't need an official report from the government or some forecast from Wall Street to understand it. The story's right there in your last grocery receipt, the new electric bill on the counter, and that daunting number on your credit card statement. For millions of us, just getting by has become impossible. Life is now a constant, stressful calculation of which bills get paid this month and which ones have to be pushed back. For the last couple of years, it's been the same painful cycle. They say inflation is cooling off, but our cost of living never got the message. Utility bills have shot up so high that over 14 million families are now facing overdue notices big enough to risk having their power cut off. Groceries cost more every week, gas and electricity are eating up more of our paychecks, and the basic services we rely on are draining our accounts like never before. All the while, our wages have barely budged, and any savings we manage to scrape together vanish in an instant. So, debt is what fills the void. Mortgages are at an all-time high. Credit card balances have never been bigger, and after a few years of pause, people are starting to fall behind on student loans again. But a family's ability to hang on looks a lot different on some analyst's spreadsheet than it does in your own kitchen at 11 o'clock at night, trying to decide which payment can be late without the heat or water getting shut off. The crisis becomes undeniable when you see how all these pressures, utilities, debt, housing, stagnant wages, and everyday costs are all pushing families toward the same breaking point. For years, we were told that inflation was getting better, that things were normalizing, but the reality for the average American family tells a completely different story. The official Consumer Price Index showed an annual increase of around 3% in 2025, a figure they used to tell us the worst was over. But in that same time, the cost of food jumped by more than 3%. Energy prices kept climbing, and services from childcare to fixing a leaky faucet got more expensive, not cheaper. The big picture data might have looked better, but our family budget never saw the relief. This disconnect between the inflation they report and the inflation we live with is where our daily life starts to come apart. When we say our groceries feel 20% more expensive, we're not making it up. We are feeling the crushing weight of 3 years of non-stop price hikes. When a gallon of milk costs a little more and fresh produce is a bit pricier, and all the pantry basics creep up month after month, you end up in a world where the paycheck just doesn't last and there's zero room for error. We see the same thing with our utilities. Even a small hike in the electric or gas rate puts enormous pressure on a family that was already just scraping by. And since you can't just decide not to use electricity or heat, we feel every single dollar of that increase right away. Inflation on a chart is just a number. Inflation in your home is a vice grip. It's that moment a family stops choosing what to buy and starts choosing what to give up. That's the choice that begins the slow, painful process of everything unraveling. Out of all the rising costs squeezing our family, the utility bills have been one of the biggest shocks. Things like electricity, water, and gas, which used to be predictable expenses, now feel like we've taken on another massive loan. National reports show that more than 14 million households started 2025 with utility bills so far behind that they were at risk of being disconnected. The average amount owed ballooned to almost $790, a figure that would have seemed impossible just a decade ago. This isn't just about prices going up, it's about essential services becoming too expensive for a family to afford. The cost of electricity by itself has been climbing faster than everything else for years, thanks to things like grid maintenance, fuel prices, and extreme weather. Water companies in states all over the country have jacked up their fees to repair old pipes, leaving families stunned when a monthly water bill starts to look more like a car payment than a basic utility. More and more of us are saying, we've gotten shut-off warnings or had to get on a payment plan just to keep the lights on and the water running. This isn't just happening to a few people here and there. When millions of families are all falling behind on utilities at the same time, it's a sign that something fundamental has changed. It's the moment the absolute basics of modern life become unaffordable, and the fallout from that is instant. When the utility companies take a huge bite out of your income, other things have to slide. Doctors' bills, credit card payments, rent, even the grocery budget gets cut to the bone as we're forced to triage which absolute necessities we can manage to pay for. It is right here, in the rising cost of these fundamental services, that you can see the first cracks of everyday life beginning to shatter. With the cost of living rising so much faster than our paychecks, more of us are turning to debt just to keep our heads above water. What used to be a safety net for emergencies has become a daily lifeline. And now, for so many, it's a weight that's spinning out of control. By the end of 2025, American household debt had hit the highest point in our nation's history. Mortgage debt soared past $13 trillion, and the total on our credit cards topped $1.2 trillion. Student loan debt was hovering around $1.6 trillion once the payments started up again. But those huge numbers don't even capture the whole picture. You can see the real stress when you look at how many people are falling behind. About 4.5% of all household debt is now late, ranging from just missing a payment to being over 90 days past due. Student loans are seeing the biggest spike, with serious delinquencies jumping to over 9%, a huge leap after years of the payment pause. Car loan delinquencies are also on the rise, a direct result of higher car prices, soaring insurance rates, and the insane cost of repairs. At the same time, credit card companies have reported writing off billions of dollars in unpaid debt, something we haven't seen on this scale since the great financial crisis. These write-offs tell you a hard truth. Families aren't just using credit cards for extras anymore. They are falling behind on the minimum payments. Debt turns into a trap when your income can't cover the cost of necessities. Every late payment just tightens the squeeze, giving you less breathing room and making it more likely you'll face even bigger problems down the road. As more and more families get caught in this cycle, the reality becomes clear. The financial bedrock of the American family is crumbling from within. For generations, owning a home was the bedrock of financial security. It was where you built a future, a sense of safety, and long-term stability. Today, that foundation feels like it's about to give way. The cost of shelter has been one of the biggest drivers of inflation, and it's hitting everyone, whether you're a renter or a homeowner. In cities everywhere, renters are spending a record portion of their income just to keep a roof over their heads. Meanwhile, anyone hoping to buy a home is facing mortgage payments that have skyrocketed because of high interest rates and home prices that are still near historic highs. Even those of us who already own our homes aren't safe. Our insurance premiums are climbing, property taxes keep going up, and the cost of basic maintenance is inflated because of shortages of labor and materials. A leaky roof, a problem with the plumbing, or a broken appliance used to be a manageable problem, but now any one of those things can be a financial bomb that pushes a family deep into debt. And you can see the impact across the entire housing market. Home inspectors are saying it's the slowest season they've seen in decades. Loan officers are talking about handling just a handful of applications compared to the boom years. With homes less affordable than they've been in a generation, people who want to buy are stuck on the sidelines. That means fewer homes are being sold, and entire industries that depend on real estate are struggling to survive. Affordability isn't just about a price tag. It's about what's possible for your family. And when a home, the very heart of the American dream, becomes something you can no longer afford or manage, it's a sign of more than just a housing crisis. It's a sign of how fragile our everyday lives have become. As the costs for housing, utilities, and just living day-to-day climb faster than our paychecks, more of us are finding ourselves just one emergency away from financial disaster. Recent studies shows that nearly 30% of lower-income households are living with zero financial safety net, and even middle-class families, who were once thought to be insulated, are now just one emergency away from a crisis. In a climate like this, financial security is a fragile thing, where even small problems can have catastrophic consequences. Living paycheck to paycheck isn't just a sign of poor budgeting. It's a red flag indicating the entire economic system is under duress. When a family has to pour nearly all its money into essentials like rent, utilities, gas, and groceries, the possibility of saving money vanishes. And when savings vanish, so does the ability to recover from a setback. One medical bill, one car breakdown, a sudden rent hike, or a few missed days of work can send a family spiraling into debt, a debt from which they may never escape. Adding to this is the crushing mental weight of constant financial worry. Families trapped in this cycle aren't just wrestling with math. They are living under a constant cloud of uncertainty. Their choices shrink, their focus shifts to pure survival, and planning for the future becomes an impossible luxury. This is why so many families say they feel like they are falling further and further behind, even when they are somehow managing to keep the lights on. Generations ago, a steady job was seen as a reliable ticket to a better life. Today, that same job might barely be enough to put food on the table. And when more and more of the country is living without a cushion, without stability, and with no way forward, it becomes undeniable that the financial stress crushing everyday Americans is no longer a rare problem. It has become the new standard. While millions of Americans are fighting just to afford the basics, the official story we hear continues to paint a picture of an economy that is strong, healthy, and even thriving. Stock markets hit new all-time highs, corporate profits look robust, and the news is filled with stories of job creation. But the reality for most households tells a completely different tale, pointing to one of the most glaring warning signs of economic trouble hiding just beneath the surface. The gap starts with how we define success. Financial markets cheer when companies slash costs, bring in automation, or announce layoffs. Firing workers often causes a company's stock price to jump, as investors anticipate higher profits on the horizon. But what's considered efficient on a corporate spreadsheet takes food off the table for real families and sucks spending power out of the local communities that relied on those jobs. Artificial intelligence and automation are only making this divide worse. Companies shrink their workforce, their productivity soars, and Wall Street rewards them for it. However, for the workers themselves, these shifts translate to fewer job prospects, paychecks that don't grow, and a tougher scramble for the few secure jobs remaining. A sky-high market valuation does not create a thriving middle class. Even the big-picture economic numbers can hide how shaky the foundation really is. The overall growth rate might look strong, but it's increasingly being propped up by household debt instead of rising wages. Consumer spending stays high only because families are swiping credit cards more, not because they're earning more. It's a fragile illusion of prosperity, one that can only hold up as long as people can continue to borrow. On paper, everything looks fine. In reality, many of the pillars that support daily life are crumbling. And the wider the chasm grows between these two versions of America, the more unstable our foundation becomes. Away from the national employment figures and headline-grabbing job stats, a quieter, but far more meaningful change is happening at the local level. The first hints of trouble often surface in the small service industries, the handymen, the independent contractors, the repair technicians, and other local tradespeople who rely directly on the spending of average households. When these individuals start to lose work, it's usually a sign that family finances are getting squeezed hard. All across the nation, you hear stories of skilled handymen with sterling reputations going for days or even weeks without a single service call. It isn't because people's homes have stopped needing repairs. It's because families are now pulling up how-to videos and trying to do it themselves because they can't bear the cost of hiring a professional. Home inspection companies are facing a similar struggle, with their slow seasons dragging on for far longer than they used to. Some are so desperate, they started cold calling former clients to ask for referrals, a clear sign of an industry fighting to stay afloat. Mortgage brokers are telling a similar story. Loan officers in markets that were red-hot just a few years back report that their business has shrunk to a fraction of what it once was. A perfect storm of high interest rates, unaffordable home prices, and deep-seated uncertainty has brought demand to a standstill, leaving some entire branches with barely any loans to process. These small fractures are significant. When local service workers see their income drop, they cut their own spending, which just makes the slowdown worse. The entire community feels the pressure as less money circulates. And because these local jobs are the canaries in the coal mine for family budgets, their struggles often foreshadow what the national data won't show for months, that the real economy is weakening from the ground up. On its own, any single one of the financial pressures on American households would be difficult. A higher power bill could be dealt with. A rent hike could be absorbed. Small bumps in the cost of food or insurance could be managed with a tighter budget. Even mounting debt might be controllable if paychecks were growing alongside it. But the truth is, these pressures aren't arriving one by one, and they aren't happening in a vacuum. Instead, they are all hitting at once, compounding one another and fundamentally altering the fabric of daily life. When the utility bill eats a bigger chunk of your paycheck, there is less left over for rent. When the rent goes up, the credit card balances start to creep up. When those balances grow, the minimum monthly payments get bigger. As those payments take more of your income, savings get wiped out. And when there are no savings, any surprise expense. A blown car engine, an ER visit, a new school fee. A broken water heater becomes an instant catastrophe. What starts as a single issue sets off a devastating domino effect. This convergence of problems is why countless households feel completely wiped out. They aren't wrestling with one challenge, they are fighting a war on multiple fronts simultaneously. And because every problem feeds the others, families can never get back on their feet. The things that used to provide a buffer, decent wages, savings, affordable housing, and predictable bills no longer offer the security they once did. Economists can argue about the precise definition of a recession, but for families, the economy is measured in a much simpler way, by the bills they can actually pay, the debt that keeps piling up, and the impossible choices they are forced to make. And by that standard, this collision of crises is already changing the very definition of a normal life in America. Behind every cold statistic is a real family facing choices that get more painful with each passing month. For so many retirees, the rising cost of basic necessities has turned what should have been their golden years into a constant source of anxiety. Fixed incomes that used to comfortably cover the mortgage, medicine, bills, and groceries no longer stretch far enough, forcing them into agonizing trade-offs. Some have started skipping doctor's appointments or splitting pills to make ends meet. Working families are feeling the squeeze just as intensely. Parents who once paid their bills without much worry now find themselves questioning every item in their shopping cart, putting off necessary car repairs or cutting back on small family activities. An alarming number are now getting delinquency notices or shutoff warnings from utility companies, not because they are spending foolishly, but because their income simply doesn't cover the cost of living anymore without taking on debt. Younger households, meanwhile, are waking up to a version of adulthood that is nothing like what they were led to expect. Many are pushing off major life goals like buying a house, starting a family, or building a nest egg, not for lack of trying, but because the financial goalposts for achieving stability are moving faster than they can run. Their hopes for the future have been downsized to just surviving month to month. You won't find these stories on a government spreadsheet, but they reveal what the raw data cannot: the emotional exhaustion of living in an economy where every choice feels like a trap. The numbers show the pressure. For millions of people, their personal stories paint a clear picture of the consequences, showing just how much the current economy is changing daily life when prices climb way faster than paychecks. A sense of stability is becoming harder and harder to find, and many Americans are now making changes not because they want to, but because they have no other choice. This is no longer about smart financial planning. It's about survival. It's a total reset on how families weigh risks, choose their expenses, and get ready for the constant uncertainty that has become the new reality. One of the clearest signs of this is the boom in do-it-yourself attitudes. Jobs once given to professionals, like fixing things around the house or basic maintenance, are now being done by homeowners themselves to cut down on costs. Families are now learning practical skills they never thought they'd need, all in an effort to lower their monthly bills. Others are simplifying how they live, canceling subscriptions, skipping non-essential purchases, or finding new ways to make their budget for necessities last longer. Even though it's much harder to save money, doing so has become more critical than ever. Households that manage to put away even a little into an emergency fund feel far more prepared to deal with life's unexpected curveballs. At the same time, some people are shifting their money into assets that feel safer, not to gamble on big returns, but simply to protect their money's value in these unpredictable times. But these personal strategies can only do so much. Making adjustments at home can't fight back against the larger economic pressures everyone is facing, nor can cutting back replace the security that comes from a solid income, predictable housing payments, and utility bills that don't break the bank. What these changes do offer, however, is a way to be more resilient. It provides just enough of a buffer to get through the tough times while the economy as a whole struggles to find its footing. As this survival mode becomes more common, it's obvious the issue isn't just that things are expensive. It's about figuring out how to get by in a world where the old rules for financial stability are being rewritten as we speak. When you put all the pieces together, the image is undeniable. The cost of living crisis in the U.S. isn't from just one problem. It's the combined crush of soaring utility costs, massive household debt, and wages that simply haven't kept pace. These forces have completely transformed daily routines, pushing more families to the financial edge and showing stress fractures in the economy long before official numbers ever do. A decent home is now out of reach for many. Building any kind of savings feels like a monumental task, and paying even the most basic bills has turned into a monthly challenge. This is the new normal for millions, the true fallout from a cost of living crisis in the U.S. that just keeps digging in deeper. What's the one area of your daily life that has been impacted the most? If this overview helped you connect the dots, please consider subscribing so you'll be in the know before the next major economic shift hits.